Okay, so we are live on Facebook now. So good evening, everyone. Today we have Wendy Hawkins here with us, and she is with Forsyth Audubon and knows a ton about birds. And so we're excited to have her back for our summer reading program where we're talking about all things animals. And so today I asked her to just share a little bit about Forsyth Audubon and also just about how you can get involved with birds and bird watching or birding, depending on what you want to call it. So thank you so much for being here, Wendy.
You are so welcome. I'm so excited to be here and talk about one of my favorite animals, birds. And there are so many species of birds and I enjoy them all. And what I really want to do today, there's a million things I could share, but I really want to share about how you can easily start bird watching and then give you some tools and then also just the link to Forsyth Audubon is just a great resource, as are some other things as well. And we certainly offer a lot of opportunity to help people go birding and learn how to bird. So that's where we're going today. And I'm also happy to answer questions and email later on. You can also find more information on our website. So
Yeah,
all
feel
right.
free to leave in the comments and stuff, and I'll be kind of watching on the live on my phone. So if I see something pop up, I'll mention it as well.
Great. All right, so this is Forsyth Audubon, and we are a local chapter of the National Audubon Society. And so there are lots of activities in Audubon Society that you can get involved in. And I just want to give an overview of what I would call Birding 101. And these are just to get you enticed. Here are a few photos that I've taken that of birds that you can see. Of course, probably most people recognize the mallard, which is a kind of duck, and the American goldfinch. You may have seen those in your yard, especially if you have cone flowers or things that would attract them, or sunflowers. The barred owl is one of our most common owls in the area. And one of the migratory birds I love to see that just spends a few days here is the rose-breasted grosbeak. Beautiful, beautiful bird. So what is birding? Where to bird? Tools for birding, how to bird, some strategies you can use, other bird activities, and reading about birds are some of the things I'm going to cover today. This is an American robin in my backyard. So what is birding? Here's a bald eagle in the background here too. This was at Salem Lake. So birding basically is just watching and or listening to birds. And I like to point out listening because sometimes you can just go out with no binoculars or anything and just listen for the birds because they make unique sounds. Each one of them makes a unique sound. Every species has unique voices. So you can learn those, and a lot of times you can hear a bird before you see it. So you can go outside, and if you practice listening to birds and then equating that with what you see or have seen in the past, or you can use online resources like at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology website. They have a online bird guide, as well as there's an Audubon one as well, where you can also listen to the birds. So you can learn those sounds and you can go out and listen and see what you hear.
I actually learned recently I could hook that up to my Alexa in the house and
Oh,
then just go,
yeah.
oh, play a red-winged blackbird or whatever, and
Yeah.
it'll make the sound.
Yeah.
So I recommend that if you're trying to learn them.
There's a lot of great apps, which, you could probably spend a whole, session just on learning the apps, because there's like eBird and there's the Audubon app. There's a lot of free stuff. iNaturalist is also another good one for identifying all kinds of things. If you can take a picture of something, and so yeah, there's a lot of great resources. So where to go birding? Well, basically anywhere. You can bird from a stationary spot at your home, like even I do out my window while I'm sitting here in my living room. And it can be anything from there to traveling the world. And we have members of our local Audubon chapter, Forsyth Audubon, who do everything in between. So birding can happen anywhere, anytime, any place. And it can be spontaneous, like if you're, maybe I'll go back. Will it go back? No, it won't go back. Oh wait, yes it will. Sorry, I
That's
didn't
all
do
right.
that. So yeah, so basically, um, at your house, you can do things like, you can set up a bird feeder or a bird bath, or you can plant native plants. And there's lots of information on our Audubon website about that. You can go on a bird walk by yourself or with friends, or with our Audubon chapter. We have bird walks, and you can do a day trip somewhere. You can spend all day at a park. You can search hot spots and really good birding spots in a variety of ways as well. You can find them on eBird. You can also there's books, like one of my favorite books, which I'll show a picture of a little bit later, is about the 500 most important bird areas, called IBAs, and that'll show you like over, I guess, the whole North America, where you can go to find really super birding spots. You could take a weekend, you could take a week, you can travel all over the world. So there's lots of possibilities for birding. And it can even just be incidental. That's another category you'll find if you get into eBird, where say you weren't going out to bird, but you were on a picnic somewhere, or you were just walking to your car and you heard or saw something. That counts, So just keeping your eyes and ears open that's the basic tools of birding, your eyes and your ears. All right, next. Here we go. Okay, so if you're birding in your backyard, which is a great place to start, if there's any habitat around your home or apartment where you live, you'd be amazed at what birds you could find if there's just even a little bit of natural space. And the basic elements, depending on what you might like to do in your yard, are going to be food, shelter, and water. And in the Audubon Society, we have pages of information about native plants, which are super important for birds because they provide seeds, berries, and native insects that the birds need to eat. Non-native plants don't do nearly as good a job at providing all of the essentials that our birds need as native plants do. So you can find a whole bunch more information about that on the website. But native plants are a really great way to attract birds to your yard and just create a general better habitat for all wildlife, actually. You could put out a feeder if you like. Sometimes you may have read in the news, there's sometimes issues with feeders where if it can transfer disease if there are birds lingering in the area that have gotten some kind of infection, and they can infect other birds. So, try to keep them clean and look out for those kind of things. Look out for announcements about issues in the area. So if you may need to take your feeders down for a while, clean them, and then put them back, just be aware of those things so we can keep our birds healthy. Shelter. Native plants provide great shelter for birds, anything from low ground cover type and the shrub plants to vines to trees. So all different levels of bird protection and habitat are really super. And a water source. Birds need water just like people do, and a water source is a great way to attract birds that say you may have a seed feeder, but not all birds eat seeds. So you're going to attract other species of birds with a bird bath. And that's just a really great way. And it can be a really simple thing as a dish that's not too slippery and not too deep, and in a place where the birds are going to feel safe, where it's not going to be near a place where maybe a predator in ambush could come out and get your bird. So those are just some basics about the elements that you might be able to add to your yard. And so tools, I'm kind of covering up there. Well, that's not really working. Maybe I'll do this. Trying to see what my screen says here. So tools for birding, basic tools. And first we talked about eyes and ears. Those are pretty much all you really need to appreciate birds. But a field guide is really helpful. And I've got, some pictures here of some different things. And there's the 500 most important bird areas if you really want to get into finding, different places you've never been and go birding. Here is an example. I have a National Geographic bird guide, and there are lots of great bird guides. And the two things you'll want to look for in a bird guide is that there are two types, and I like to have one of each. One is a type that has artist depictions of birds. Those are going to have, for sure, all the key ID markings that you need to look for when you're looking for birds. Another good complement to that is a field guide that actually has photographs of birds. And the photographs and the artist depictions are a good combination because the photographs give you an idea of kind of what the bird might look like in some kind of natural setting, in the natural lighting, and that can be good or it can also be problematic. So that's why it's kind of good to have both. And I have a stack of them. So you don't have to have a stack, but one of each type is, I think, a really good idea because you can cross-reference that way. And then, like I said, there's lots of online resources between Audubon Society and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and eBird, which is hosted by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. So those resources are endless and they are very, very good. And then, of course, a pair of binoculars is really great because you can only get so close to birds. And if you are trying to get an idea of what you're hearing and you need to see it more clearly, a good pair of binoculars is definitely worth it. And one thing that I like to tell people about binoculars, there's a wide range of prices for binoculars. But one of the things that is ideal to look for in binoculars is something that is either 8 by 42 or 10 by 42, because that gives you a really good magnification. So the 8 is the magnification, the 10 is the magnification. The 42 has to do with the width of the field of view that you're going to see, and it's really easier to spot your bird if you are being able to look through a wider field of view with that magnification at a certain distance rather than a more narrow one. It's going to be easier to find that bird. So those are just some basic specs about binoculars that you're going to want to know. And then be aware of going out with the right kind of clothing for the weather, for the terrain you're going to be walking on. If you're going to be on any kind of a dirt path or things that might have obstacles for your feet, a good pair of closed-toed shoes are a really good idea. And a lot of times, even in warm weather, if you're going out early to go birding and you might be walking across some grass, it's a really good idea to have some shoes that, unless you don't mind your feet being kind of cold and wet and damp, then you might want to put on something that's waterproof or water resistant, because it's going to be a more comfortable walk, especially if you're going to be out there for a while. And I've certainly discovered that the hard way. So I do recommend something that's going to protect your feet, make you comfortable, and protect yourself from bugs and things like that. So just be aware of where you're going to be going. And if you're going to be out for a while, be sure to bring a snack and some water for yourself, because then you can enjoy birding much better that way. More tools. So if you're really becoming a bird fanatic and you want to invest in a few good tools, spotting scope, which is on the right hand side of the screen here, which is like a telescope for birding basically. And you can get some decent spotting scopes that are not overly expensive, or you can spend a small fortune on them if you really want to. There's a lot of good tools that are very expensive, and there's the really decent tools that are not overly expensive either. And a spotting scope is really great for if you are, say, at a lake, like, the first one that comes to mind for me is Salem Lake. It's so close to my house, and that you're on that shore and you're looking out at a flotilla of ducks, let's say, and you're wondering what species of ducks are out there. But even with a good pair of binoculars, they may be too far to really see clearly for a good ID what they are. So a spotting scope is really great. And you have a tripod and your spotting scope, and that way it gets a much bigger magnification. Mine starts at 15 and goes up to, I think, 70 or 80, I can't remember now, but and there's a wide range of spotting scopes, but it'll magnify it really well so that you can see it clearly. And of course the tripod keeps it still, because at that level of magnification, it's too hard to hold it still with your hand and be able to actually see something. So then a camera is also a really great tool. I love my camera. I happen to have a Canon, and with a 400mm lens that's shown in the picture there. And the camera that I have is a T6i Rebel, but there are lots of great cameras. This one's decent, and the 400mm prime lens that I have, which prime means that it doesn't zoom for different magnifications, it's a fixed magnification, but it's not too heavy to carry around for getting some really great shots of birds. And it makes me look like a great photographer, and I'm just really a beginner. So anyway, all the photos I've shown you so far are taken with that camera, and it's a lot of fun, and it can be so addicting. But anyway, those are some great tools. And of course, online tools as well for identifying birds and such. How to bird. So some things you just want to remember when you go out birding is birding etiquette, because it can be really easy to just, try to follow a bird and maybe not pay attention to where you're going and maybe stepping where you shouldn't. So the first thing I want to say is when you're out there birding, we want to keep a good name for ourselves as birders, and we don't want to trespass where we shouldn't be or walk on natural habitat where there might not, there might be some natural habitat rehab going on in an area, and you don't want to tread on that where there's no path. So you want to watch out for that and just be careful of our environment and other people's property. You don't want to trespass where you shouldn't go. And basic bird anatomy is good to know, because when you're trying to identify a bird, you're going to want to be able to think about the different parts of a bird. And so here's just a sample of the parts of a bird that you're going to want to pay attention to, around like the beak and the eye. Maybe they have an eye ring, or maybe they don't. What are the colors on top of the head? Where's the crown? Where's the crest? Like in this cardinal, or is that a Paraloxia? Maybe it's kind of like a female cardinal, but the beak is not the color I thought it should be. Anyway, and there's a painted bunting here, but there's different things you can look for, like wing bars. So you want to basically know, what's on the wings, what's on the tail. Maybe even if you can see its feet, what color are its feet and legs? What color was the bill, or how long was it? What shape was it? So every field guide has in the beginning of it usually a really good diagram of the anatomy of a bird. So get yourself a field guide and look in the front of it, or you can find something online like this, a diagram, and maybe print out something. It's easy to find a resource for that, and that just helps you be able to think about what parts of the bird do I want to look at whenever I am looking at a bird and trying to remember what it looks like. So as I'm mentioning birding strategies then here, the first thing you're going to notice pretty much when you look at a bird is going to be its size and shape. So, and when you go on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology website, and you go to their bird guide, they've got easy ways of looking up birds. And you can start with, if you're not sure what you've got, you can start with basic size and shape. Was it the size of a crow? Was it the size of like a sparrow? Was it a raptor? Like, was it soaring up in the sky, and what was it doing? So size, shape, the basic color of it. Is it basically dark? Like the bald eagle in the corner of the screen here, it's basically dark. It looks either sort of maybe black or brown. This one happens to have its white head and tail, so it's a mature bird. But what are the key things you're going to look for? The key ID markings. So if you're thinking about on this bird here, okay, the head, right? The beak, the tail, the wings, what colors are those? What shape are they? That bill is a really big hooked bill. So that's going to tell you that that's a bird of prey right there. Look at those sharp talons. You can see those in this picture. You can't always see them that closely, but look for things like that that'll help you identify your birds. And then another way to narrow down what kind of bird you may have, like if you're looking at sparrows, and there are so many species of sparrows, and most of them have some kind of brown, black, gray, and white on them somewhere, then what is going to distinguish one sparrow from another? Well, one thing besides just the certain placement of those ID markings on the anatomy of the bird is going to be the geographical range. If you're in North Carolina and there's a couple, maybe 2 or 3 species of sparrow that you're narrowing it down to, and one of them actually lives in California exclusively, then you can rule that one out because it's not going to be here. So in your field guide, you'll find range maps for each of the species of birds, and then you'll be able to narrow down your ID by that geographical range and the season, because we have migratory birds. So even though I'm in North Carolina, if I'm looking at a bird and I'm trying to narrow it down and I'm thinking, okay, well, here's between these 2 birds, but one of them isn't here during the summer, then I can be pretty sure that it might be the other species of bird, something that probably is here during the summer. The habitat is also another clue. Some birds are not going to come to your yard. Other birds live and really make their habitat for nesting or foraging, maybe in more of the deep wooded areas. So they're not going to be so common in your yard. So you're going to want to pay attention to, if you saw a woodpecker in your yard, is it likely to be a hairy woodpecker or a downy woodpecker? You might need to look at what your habitat is. And from my experience, the hairy woodpecker likes more wooded areas. Doesn't have to be like deep, dense woods. We certainly have them here in Winston-Salem and some of our patches of woods, but they don't come to my yard, which doesn't, it's much more spread out neighborhood. It has trees, but I get downy woodpeckers all the time. And those 2 birds look almost identical, but there are some key things about them that are a little bit different. And one way to help you narrow things down then is also habitat. Other things you might want to look at are the motion of the bird. If it goes by really fast, sometimes I can tell by the motion of a bird if it's flying flat straight or if it's got a real dip to it, up and down wave. I can tell whether maybe that was a woodpecker or a cardinal. I can tell the difference just by the flight pattern. And so those are things to look at. The sounds of the birds, like I was mentioning earlier, you can go birding by ear and not bring your binoculars or any other equipment with you. You can hear the sounds of pecking, what types of, woodpeckers have their own different drumming patterns and their different calls they make. Songbirds, they have multiple different sounds per bird, but they are unique to those species. So you can learn those and you can listen. The actions of the bird, like, does it seem to be foraging around for food on the ground a lot, or is it foraging around way up in the treetops? Warblers will most of the time be foraging for insects way up in the treetops, and they're very small. And a lot of sparrows hang out around on the ground. Not like they can't overlap, but if you look long enough and pay attention to what the bird's doing, that can give you clues as to what kind of bird you might be looking at. Is it a tree clinging bird, like a woodpecker type, or a nuthatch? If it's clinging to the bark of the tree and going up and down it, then it's probably not a sparrow. So action clues are very helpful as well. So, and then of course, there is a lot to read about birds. You can find things about every bird topic that you could possibly imagine. And I mentioned the field guides already, and reference guides, like some of the ones that I have, like the Crosley ID guide, are a little big to carry in your pocket or even in your backpack if you're going very far. But they're a great resource for doing a little more homework at home with it. And then there are magazines like the Audubon magazine, Birds and Blooms, Living Bird. There are other bird topics, like if you want to know more, in this left-hand corner here, I have some of my favorite books about how birds migrate, about bird song. We were just talking about birding by ear. You can learn a lot more from Donald Kruzma, one of the guys who has spent like his whole career, 40 years plus, studying nothing but bird song, and has written 2 amazing books about it that come with CDs that teach you about listening to bird song. Gifts of the Crow, Mind of the Raven. Those are 2 of my favorite books about how birds behave and think. So there's lots of bird topics you can find in your library or online. You can buy books and build your own library. If you are into the scientific names of birds and what those mean, which I love to do, I have this really fantastic book called Latin for Bird Lovers, and it's a really great resource for learning about more of the scientific names that you'll find in your field guide as well. And a lot of times people don't pay attention to those, but those are there. And it's a two-part name, what they call binomial nomenclature. Most of the names are Latin, and many are Greek as well. And this book actually does tell you which ones are Greek also. It'll include some of those because those do come up fairly frequently. So that's a pretty cool thing to do. And then if you're interested in doing some different types of bird activities, like building homes for birds, like if you want to put a nest box, that's another thing you can do. If you have space in your yard or community for nest boxes, you can build nest boxes for birds that are cavity nesters. And so I show a little book here about bird homes and habitats. And then I also like to draw. And so I have a book about drawing birds, which is a really, really cool guide. And it's very easy to follow, and it's really fun to do. And then there are also like coloring books, like adult coloring books, if you will, for birds that have very detailed pictures, and you can color them in with colored pencils or crayons or whatever your medium is that you like. So just some different fun things. And then there's also this there's certainly reading as an example of this Flute's Journey story of a fictional book for children. That this one talks about the migratory journey of a wood thrush. And although the story in particular is fictional, it's true information about bird migration. So it's a really great way, a fun way to learn. It's a beautiful picture book, and I'm sure there are lots more. And then here's another book that was a really cool experience. We actually got to read the manuscript for this book before it was published, and help this local author, Bonnie J. Doerr, get her book ready to be published. And we endorsed her book. And so there's quotes actually from us at the Audubon Society that are in that book. And it's like a teenage adventure book. And it's very, very interesting. She provides resources as well on how to learn more about conservation issues. And she writes several books about different wildlife animals, and she wanted to do one on birds. And so she got some of our input for that, so that it could be factual information included in this fictional adventure book, which is a really great read. I loved it. It was so much fun to read. So there's just lots of ways to be into birds. And then of course there are other bird related activities, community science. If you sign up for your free eBird account and you download the app to your mobile device, or just use it on your computer, or both, you are helping community science. If you start logging in your bird sightings, which can be either stationary or spontaneous or going on a bird walk, you log the species, the date, the time, how long you were out there, at where you were, and you are contributing to community science, because this goes into a huge database that the scientists of like Cornell Lab of Ornithology take all this information and they crunch numbers, and it basically helps the scientists know how well our birds are doing, their population fluctuations, their range fluctuations. It really is helpful. So even though it may not be exact, and if you don't have to be an expert in birding to participate in it, but it really is a good tool for them to get general ideas about how well our different species of birds are doing. So, and they have a lot of specific projects too. You can do a nest watch project. There's lots and lots of community science projects you can be involved in. And then of course there's Forsyth Audubon, and it is free, absolutely free to participate in any of our bird walks, chapter meetings, or you can volunteer for a one-time event or serve on a committee. We have education committee, conservation committee. We have all kinds of projects going on. You can serve on our board if you are interested in getting even further involved. there is a space for you at Forsyth Audubon, no matter how you want to be involved. And it is so important. I just have to say, it's really important for us to be aware and appreciate our birds and promote conservation, because birds are what we call an indicator species. And they will tell us if there is something wrong with a bird population, a certain species that might be having adverse effects, their population might be declining. That's a real clue that there's something wrong in our environment. And they are what we call indicator species, because they basically, if we're looking out for their benefit, they tell us ahead of time if something's wrong before it becomes too big of a problem to really negatively impact human beings. So they are very, very important indicators of a healthy habitat for people and all other wildlife. Here is what our webpage looks like. You can go to forsythaudobon.org and find all kinds of information and links there. And basically the bottom line is just get out there and enjoy birds, whether it's from your home or from some other place you want to explore. Just enjoying them, learning about them, and sharing your joy with other people so that they can learn to appreciate them as well, because whatever things people love, they will want to care for.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Wendy. That was so much great information. And we're so glad you could join us. I will post links for a bunch of the different things we've mentioned below this video so that you can all check those things out. Of course, we've got lots of field guides and things, even some magazines and stuff at the library. So definitely come and check those out. If there's something you saw that we don't have, we have ways sometimes of getting those for you as well. So just let a librarian know. And just so everyone knows, on Wednesday this week, we're doing another live program online for our Tails and Tales Summer Reading program about chickens. So if you like birds, chickens are birds too. We'll be talking about raising chickens in your backyard. So definitely be on the lookout for that. It's on Wednesday at 6 p.m. And I hope you all have a good evening. So we'll see you next time.